I wanted to introduce this picture because organizational change is often like this picture where you have somebody in the driving seats of a sports car wanting to push the change, being very convinced and having a great car to drive the change, but often they're trying to do this against the comfort or the willingness of the passenger, and the passenger is often much bigger than the car. So I really like this picture as a sign of what it means to promote and drive change in an organization. So we're going to talk about resistance today, and I would like to introduce the model of what is called the force field analysis. In other words, in any given situation, we have a tug of war between what we call the driving forces. In other words, the forces and the factors that want to change. So there is a certain amount of aspects to a situation that want us to change. For example, the reform is a driving force. The reform was created by people who had a vision, and it's trying to push change. The problem is, so we have different factors that are driving in one direction, but we also have what we call the restraining forces. In other words, the forces that go against the change. For example, tradition. For example, old habits. The old tapes that we talked about yesterday. So you have this tug of war between the two. And as long as they have equal force, in other words, the resisting forces are equal to the driving forces, nothing changes. And it's not that we don't have good intentions. You actually can have a lot of very motivated people who are pushing very hard, but what's pushing back is just as important as what's pushing in one direction. So it's quite important to understand this mechanism and to start identifying in your own organization what are the driving forces, and we hope that you become driving forces, but also to really identify the restraining forces. So driving forces could be incentives. One of the challenges, and you have raised that point yesterday, is that there's not enough incentive for people to really comply with the strategic management initiatives. So they say, why should I do it? There's nothing in it for me, and why should I have more work? And it's often associated with extra work on top of your routine as usual, and therefore people will tend to not be very active in driving the change. Driving forces can be new enthusiastic people. Sometimes you have new people. Remember the story about the monkeys? You know, the new monkeys who say, yes, we can actually reach the bananas, and I'm not going to listen to the old tapes or the old stories that say we can't do it. I am enthusiastic. We hope as trainers to be those enthusiastic people that help you look at the situation from a different point of view and help you be a little bit more inspired by this venture. What could be restraining forces? How would you? Old habits, yes.
Incentives.
Lack of incentives, yes. Pessimistic people. So the attitude has a lot to do with that, absolutely. People, when they go through change, invariably are very afraid. They unconsciously know that they will go through this phase of temporary incompetence. And it is true. When you're new to a system, when you adopt a new way of doing things, you will be temporarily incompetent. And it's quite difficult for us to appreciate that. I mean, just try to speak another language and you know how difficult it is and how frustrated it is to be incompetent in a different language, because it's not representative of your level of education and the way you express yourself under normal circumstances. So often learning a language is more a psychological issue than it is a reality, because you do speak English, but you don't speak English as well as you speak Turkish, and therefore the frustration and the tolerance to this temporary incompetence is often quite difficult to overcome, and that's why so many people give up. The complacency, when people say, well, it's not that bad, so it's not, in other words, it's not bad enough to do something about it, because when something is bad enough, then it becomes a driving force, okay? Then I don't have a choice. I will do what I'm supposed to do. Establish work methods. We've always done it this way. Tradition, culture, etc., etc. So we would like you to practice this with a real life example. Okay, so in a force field analysis, first of all, we want to describe the current state of the situation. You know, what is the current state? Describe a problem. In other words, what problem do we have? We need to identify the situation where the organization will end if no corrective action is taken. Clearly, we need to change because there's a reason to change. So part of the process is to identify what's going to happen if we don't make that change. What's going to happen if Turkey never abides by the reform or never implements the reform or only stays at the level of a bureaucratic compliance to the reform? What's going to happen? Then we need to describe a desired state. What exactly do we want? And remember when we talked about change is going from A to B, we need to have a clear picture of what B is. What exactly do we want? Finally, we need to brainstorm the positive and negative forces, the driving forces and the restraining factors, and review and clarify each force. What is behind each factor? For example, if tradition is such a restraining force, what is behind that? What are we afraid of if we give up the tradition? You know, do we believe that if we become more aligned with the European Commission, it means that you're going to be less Turkish, for example? And we need to be able to say, no, we can actually be aligned with the European Commission standard, but also remain very Turkish and keep our national identity. We're not asking you to give up your cultural identity. So take a significant change that you would like to make in your life, whatever that is. I would like to change jobs, I would like to have a baby, I would like to change a car, I would like to buy a house, I would like to move to Istanbul, whatever change you are thinking about, you haven't done it yet, you're thinking about it. If you had done your change, that means you wouldn't have, the driving forces would have been bigger than the restraining forces. But the fact that you haven't done that change means that you are still in the process of thinking about it. Now, we all have a change in mind. It may not be a change next week, but a change over a long period of time. So what is your next change, okay? So try to describe A. If I say I want to move to Istanbul, well, what is wrong with being in Ankara? I need to really understand what makes me want to go live somewhere else. So what's happening? Maybe I'm happy in Ankara, but maybe I don't see a potential for growth in my job. Or maybe I'm tired of the traffic and I want to live in a quieter environment. Or maybe, I don't know, I mean, whatever reason makes you decide to change. There is a reason why you want to change. If you were perfectly happy and satisfied with your situation, you wouldn't even think about change, okay? So you need to describe the situation. What's driving me to leave Ankara? What is the problem exactly? Do I feel like leaving Ankara simply because I feel like it or because there is a real reason? You know, and what evidence do I have that it's going to be so much better somewhere else? So I really need to start looking at you know, what exactly is bothering me. I need to identify the situation where the situation will end if no corrective action is taken. In other words, if I stay in Ankara and I don't move to a different city, what's going to happen? What's going to happen next year? What's going to happen 5 years from now? What's going to happen 10 years from now? Okay? Then you need to describe the desired state. Okay, I'm going to move to Istanbul. What is it going to look like? I'm going to have a different life. I'm going to have maybe a different job. What makes you so sure that you're going to be so much happier? What makes you so sure that you're actually going to find what you're looking for if you don't describe exactly what you're looking for? Then you need to brainstorm the positive and the negative forces. There's a certain amount of factors that I'm sorry. There's a certain amount of factors that drive you. You know, it might be more international in Istanbul. It might be more opportunities. Maybe I'll make more money. I don't know if it's true. I'm just thinking out loud. Maybe I'll be more money. Maybe my quality of life will be better. Maybe I'll have more international exposure. Maybe this, maybe that. So these are all the driving forces. But at the same time, the restraining forces is I need to leave my friend, my parents are going to complain, I don't know what to do with my house, what am I going to do with my car, you know, whatever, everything that stops you from actually making the change. And then review and clarify each force. What is behind that? If I say, you know, my parents are going to complain, well, what's behind this? Does it mean that I finally have to grow up and tell my parents that I'm not going to see them every day anymore, you know, and then I'm an independent adult, and yes, I can keep in touch, and yes, I still love them, but it's time to move on? You know, so we need to really explore what's behind every driving force, because or every restraining force, because if we do not explore, we're constantly going to come up with some excuses, but not really looking at the reason behind that. And what is necessary to support the change? So, who can help you? Maybe you can say, well, maybe if I had a great job offer, then of course I would go. You know, or if I had the promise of a much better salary, then of course I would go. So I'm waiting for that. Is that the determining factor? Is it money? Or is it the approval of my friends? Or is it my wife saying, yes, it's okay, let's go, let's move, you know, now is the time. In other words, to really start looking at who can help you make a decision. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go to this way or that way. It's for you to decide. But this process allows you to make a much better educated decision, and to really look at your own process when you make a decision, and to say what exactly is driving me and what exactly is stopping me. Otherwise, we keep on talking about the same thing and we never do anything about this. I'm sure you know somebody in your family or in your environment that keeps on saying, I will do this, I will do this, I will do that, but they actually never do it.